Hello, and welcome back for another episode of Financial Freedom by 40. In this week's episode, we are continuing our time on the Ningaloo Coast. This is our last episode of the Ningaloo Coast, and we get to see some pretty amazing things in the time that we were here. We start this week's episode where we left off last time, continuing our time at the beautiful Osprey Bay campground, where we got to spend so much time swimming with the beautiful turtles and other sea life there. We then continue on up for a stay at Kurajong camp, which is also in the Cape Range National Park, and explore some of the other snorkeling sites that are close to Kurajong. We then head around to Exmouth, where we spend some time catching up on life admin, getting a little bit of supplies, and of course, heading out to try and spot some whale sharks. And then finally, we finish up our time at Exmouth with a visit over to the beautiful Charles Knife Canyon and a quick stop in at the Exmouth Discovery Centre to learn a bit more about the Ningaloo Reef. But before we let you know whether we got to see the whale sharks or not, we will take you back to Osprey Bay. Osprey Bay was one of our favourite campsites on the Ningaloo Coast. The Osprey Bay campground is located within the Cape Range National Park, and it is one of the campgrounds that is easily accessible from Exmouth. It's about an hour's drive out of the town of Exmouth, and it is all on sealed roads. The only part of the road that's gravel is the entrance road into the campsite itself and then the campsites, but they are nicely maintained, so easily accessed by two-wheel drive, which is in contrast to the sites south of Yardi Creek, which are four-wheel drive access only. One of the best things about the Osprey Bay campsite is the abundance of turtles that live in the ocean just outside the campsites. I don't think there was a single time while we were at Osprey Bay that we went snorkeling and we didn't happen to see at least one turtle. On this occasion, we got to see this little guy who looks like somebody has tried to have a bit of a munch on his shell and his hind fin, but he still seemed to be getting along just fine. It's quite possible he was a rescue turtle, or he or she was a rescue turtle that was returned to the ocean. We learned a little bit about some of the rescue turtles when we were in Bunbury at the Dolphin Discovery Centre there, and we were told that some of the turtles that have been injured are actually released from the Bunbury Centre up at Ningaloo at around about the time of year that we were there. So may very well be that this little turtle was one of those rescue turtles. Now this one here was pretty special as well. Xavier and I were out snorkeling one day and we happened upon two turtles who were just grazing peacefully in the ocean really close to each other. So it was a pretty cool experience getting to see two of these beautiful creatures up close and even in the same shot. At this point, you might be starting to wonder if the only creatures we saw in the ocean outside Osprey Bay were turtles, but you would be wrong. We also saw lots and lots of fish, including some giant trevallies and lots of other fish. Many of the fish that we saw while we were snorkeling were large ones of the eating variety, and this made the boys very interested in getting their fishing rods out. Now you might be wondering if it is a marine sanctuary and how the fishing works in this scenario. Although the Ningaloo Coast is bordered by a large marine park, there are varying different statuses within the marine park, some of which allow for recreational fishing from boats and some of which allow for recreational fishing only from the shore. This is one of the areas that allows recreational line fishing, although spearfishing isn't allowed in this zone and actually isn't allowed in much of the area within the marine park. There are maps available from the Visitors Information Centre that show you all of the different zones and what you can and can't do in terms of collecting fish or shellfish in the area, and it's well worth making yourself aware of the different zones and what you can't do and what fish you're allowed to catch, etc., as there are some pretty hefty fines if you don't follow the rules. We did hear of one other tourist who had caught the wrong species of fish. They thought it was one thing and it was actually something else, and were fined over $700 for the mistake. So make sure you have the right information before you go fishing. One of the mornings that we were staying in the Cape Range National Park, we decided to drive back to the Yardi Creek area and take the walk up the Yardi Creek Gorge. The Yardi Creek is the area you would have seen us a couple of weeks ago crossing with the car, and the part we crossed actually had no water. But further up the creek there is a big waterway, and we had heard that there was a lot of wildlife to check out. Up here we are having a look at a colony of bats in the mangrove trees. Oh, there's heaps in that tree there, yeah, you can see the wings moving.
They're like the flying foxes that we saw at that other hanging site.
Great hill.
Well, it looks like bats today.
We've heard that it is a beautiful kayak or paddleboard trip up the Yardi Creek Gorge, so if you're in the area that might be something you'd like to give a try. We also heard that it's a great spot to visit to watch the sunrise, and although we didn't quite make it there in time for the sunrise, it was still beautiful there in the early hours of the morning. Unfortunately then, it was time for us to say goodbye to Osprey Bay and all of the beautiful Osprey Bay turtles and head on to our next camp. This certainly wasn't the end of the snorkeling for us on the Ningaloo though, and we still got to see some other beautiful turtles at our other campsites. But before we leave Osprey behind, we'll show you the beautiful sunset that we got to experience on our last night, and this is the view right in front of the campsite we were staying at. After Osprey Bay, we moved on to the Kurajong campground. Kurajong is a place where you can do some snorkeling, but while we were there, it was pretty windy, and the snorkeling in front of where we were camped was not that great. The visibility was pretty low, and it was quite choppy. We instead headed around to the Oyster stacks, which we heard was really fantastic for snorkeling. Aside from Osprey Bay, the Oyster stacks were one of our favourite spots to go snorkeling on the Ningaloo Coast. The snorkeling is easily accessible from the shore, and this is one of the places where there was the highest abundance of corals. The corals here were also pretty healthy, unlike some of the other areas that we have snorkeled, where we've seen quite a lot of coral damage. And as you can see here, just because we left Osprey Bay behind didn't mean we left the turtles behind. There were still turtles out and about in this area as well, and it was kind of cool to see them swimming in amongst all of the corals. As well as lots of healthy corals, there were also lots and lots of fish at the Oyster stacks, and lots of fish of different varieties as well. So that was pretty cool, getting to snorkel around with big schools of fish. Here at the Oyster stacks there is quite a strong current, and this is actually present at a number of the snorkeling sites along the Ningaloo Coast. So what that means is that it pays to get in at a particular spot on the beach. In this case we walked down the beach for quite a way and then jumped in the water and allowed the current to take us down closer to where we had parked the car. We then got back out of the water, walked back up the beach and did it all again. The other important thing to know about snorkeling here is that it is best done at high tide. The water goes out quite quickly here we found, and so you're probably best to arrive a little bit before high tide, snorkel over the high tide and then get out of the water as the tide starts to recede. In fact, the corals can get really close to you if you are in there for too long, and so we definitely decided it was best to exit the water as soon as the tide started to drop. As you can see here, this spot has some really beautiful and large corals and lots of different coloured corals as well, which was pretty cool compared to the ones that we had seen at some of the other snorkeling spots. was the famous Turquoise Bay snorkeling area. Turquoise Bay is also a drift snorkeling area, and it's an area that you have to be a little bit careful snorkeling in, as there are also some pretty strong currents here. According to the information at this site, there is a gap in the reef just outside of the snorkeling area, and the currents tend to pull out in the direction of the gap in the reef. So you have to get in at one particular spot, drift down, and then hop out before you get into the danger zone. Just something to bear in mind if you are snorkeling in this location. It's not a major, we didn't find the current was so strong that we couldn't get out of the water when we needed to, but we did see a few people getting out a little bit too far, and probably not the best idea to do that. We did find the visibility was a little bit cloudier in Turquoise Bay, but still lots to see. Unfortunately, we did happen to see a lot more corals that seemed to be affected by the coral bleaching and that were a bit damaged, but still lots of fish life, lots of corals to see, and a great spot to visit. It also has a really beautiful beach, so there were lots of families there enjoying the beach, and of course the waters were living up to the name of Turquoise Bay, so a nice turquoise beach with white sand and just a really great place to spend the day. So lots of swimming, you don't have to spend the whole time snorkeling. We actually did one or two little snorkels and then spent most of the day playing on the beach and having some swims to cool off, as it was still pretty hot when we were visiting this part of the Ningaloo. And once again, we did happen upon a turtle, not quite as friendly as some of the ones from Osprey Bay, but we did have a swim along with this one as well. Turquoise Bay was our last snorkeling spot for the Ningaloo officially. We of course still had the whale shark trip to come, but we made our way into Exmouth to celebrate Ryan's birthday and also to just get ourselves ready for the next leg of our journey. It was also quite nice after all the hot weather to have ourselves a few days in a holiday park where we could run the air conditioning and make the most of the beautiful pool that they had there. You'll sing happy birthday to your dad now.
Happy
birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
You are
Happy
so
birthday,
old,
dear
I
Dad.
don't even remember
Happy
how old
birthday
you
to
are.
you. Hip hip.
Hooray!
Oh, Dad didn't even get to blow out his own
My
candles.
girlfriend's.
Oh, well that's good.
Vinny won't be happy.
You're gonna get wax all over this cake. Or this pavlova, should I say. Dad's turn this time, Zeus.
If you do, I'll light your skin.
Very good. Alright, now we can eat it. Happy birthday.
No.
Oh, you gotta make a wish. What are you wishing for?
Beer. Classic adults.
One of the things Ryan might have been wishing for was to get to see the whale sharks the following day when we went out with 3 Islands whale shark dive to try and spot some of the whale sharks off the Ningaloo Coast. The whale shark dive is one of the experiences that we have most been looking forward to out of our big lab. The whale sharks migrate along the Ningaloo Coast at this time of year, as the coral spawning happens around about April at the full moon. This brings in plankton, which feed on the coral spawn, and the whale sharks in turn feed on the plankton. We started our day with some snorkeling out on the reef. This time we got to snorkel quite a lot further out than we ever have done before. Obviously being on a boat is a bit of an advantage, and we got out to some clearer water where there was really great visibility and a lot of coral to be seen. Certainly a lot more corals than we had seen at some of the snorkeling sites along the coast. After our snorkel, it was time to head out beyond the reef in search of the whale sharks. It had been super windy when we woke up in the morning, and it was still pretty windy when we got around to this side of the coast. So we're a little bit nervous about what it was going to be like going out to see the whale sharks when it was maybe not the perfect weather conditions, but it turned out that once we got out there, it was not too bad at all. Well, there's lots of boats out that way, so I reckon the action's out there.
Oh, well, they're all going to go through
The same gap.
the same gap. Hopefully fishing charters.
True.
The wind's actually a lot better than what I thought it would be out here today.
Yeah, I think it was windier on the other side.
Yeah.
But I mean, we like they said, we are going with it now. So
Yeah. They also said if it's coming from the east and it's blowing in Exmouth, it's good here.
yeah. The trip so far.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Did you like the snorkeling?
Yeah, I like the food more.
You like the food more. And what do you think about going to see the whale sharks?
Pretty cool.
Pretty cool. Are you excited?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think we're going to see one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think we're going to see more than one? No. Let's see how we go. Lots of boats heading out that way. The whale shark companies have spotted planes that fly around outside the reef looking for the whale sharks. And once they spot them, they radio through to the skipper of the boat to let them know the location to head to. We hadn't been outside the reef for too long before we noticed the skipper had sped the boat up, and we suspected that maybe we were on to something. And it wasn't too long before our suspicions were confirmed, and we were told that it was time to get our fins on and get ready to jump into the water. What we got to see next is something that none of us will ever forget. While swimming with the whale sharks might look quite serene on the videos, it's an incredibly fast-paced experience. And the swell was actually quite big, which you can't really see in these videos of us swimming with the whale sharks. It all takes place very fast. You get to have 4 swims, but you are quickly off the back of the boat into the water, in with the whale shark, and then you have to go and sit at the side or float by the side as the whale shark goes past. And then if you can keep up, you can swim alongside it. Ryan and the boys managed to swim alongside a bit. I found it a little bit harder to keep up with my snorkeling, but altogether it was a fabulous experience and something that we would highly recommend if you are coming to the Ningaloo Coast.
Really? You're living your best life here too?
Yeah.
Hey? Are you all tired now?
Yeah.
Was that cold?
Yeah.
So good.
As we made our way back, we happened upon some other wildlife, including this leopard shark and another whale shark that was swimming near the boat.
I see it.
Just be careful.
There it is.
On the way back in, we did stop for one final snorkel, but the visibility had dropped a bit, I guess due to the bigger swells as the day had gone on, and we didn't spend too long on the water here as the currents were also pretty strong at this point in the day as well. And before we hopped out of the water, the boys did spot one very last turtle for our time on the Ningaloo Coast. One of the last things we wanted to do before heading out of this area was to catch the sunrise out at the Charles Knife Canyon. We'd heard that this was a beautiful spot and that you could capture some really fabulous sunrises out here. We started to drive out here early in the morning, and as you can see, the sun was just starting to peek up over the horizon on our way out there. We did make it this time in time to capture the sunrise over the beautiful Exmouth Gulf. Chard's Knife Canyon is the opposite side of the Cape Range to the Ningaloo Coast, and the landscape there is quite vastly different. There are some amazing walking trails in this area that you can do that get you some spectacular views of the gorges as well. Also, we've heard, but none of us really had the appetite for much walking after our big day out with the whale sharks. All of our legs were pretty tired from all of the swimming. So we decided to find ourselves a gorgeous spot at the top of the gorge and just sit here and take in the scenery while we watched the sun come up over the valley. Before heading back to camp, we went for a quick drive up the Shot Hole Canyon Gorge as well. It's a short drive from the Charles Knife Canyon, and on the way back to Exmouth, it is listed as being a four-wheel drive road, but it's not an overly taxing one. There are a few tricky little spots, but the majority of it is pretty easily accessed. There was a lot of fire damage through here when we had been through here, and so it wasn't quite as pretty as the Charles Knife Gorge around the corner, but still worth a bit of a look in if you are driving through this area. Our final stop before leaving Exmouth was the Ningaloo Discovery Centre. We'd expected this just to be an aquarium, and really there was so much more to it than that. While there was a small aquarium display, there was also this epic whale shark sculpture that shows you the size of some of the whale sharks that live out off the Ningaloo Coast. And on top of that, there was a really fascinating display about the history of Exmouth, including how the town of Exmouth became established originally as a US military base. It's well worth making the trip to the Discovery Centre just to learn a little bit more about the history of Exmouth. And this ended up being a great way to end our time in the Ningaloo. That's where we're going to leave you for this week's episode. We hope you've enjoyed following our journey along the Ningaloo Coast. And just to finish up our time on the Ningaloo, we thought we would share with you a few more videos of our time out snorkeling off the Ningaloo Coast. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode. We hope to see you again next week when we will be travelling to the Kurajong National Park.